It's time for Ask Your Auntie, the show that gets real with teen girls about life. They ask, and we answer with tea. Tools for excellence and achievement. The goal? To help girls make better decisions in real time. When you can't ask your mom or G-Ma, ask your auntie. Now here's your host, Marissa Terrell, Esquire.
Got questions? Ask your auntie. I'm Marissa Terrell, but you can call me Auntie M, and I'm director of the High Tea Society Foundation and host of this podcast, Ask Your Auntie, where we provide sugars, also known as teen girls, with reliable answers to their questions. Now let's meet our guest for today. Hey, Auntie Tiffany.
Hey.
Welcome to Ask Your Auntie.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Girl, it's been too long. Okay, but it is so good to see you. I'm trying to think back to when we first met. I'm thinking my mother was involved.
Yes. So our mothers used to work in the D.C. public school systems together.
Wow.
Yes. And it seemed like around the time when I graduated high school, the High Tea Society was just starting to form.
Okay, around 97-ish?
Yes. So somehow my mother and your mom reconnected. I got introduced to your mom, and your mom was like, we need some mentees to join the High Tea Society. So I said, okay. like okay.
Why not?
So, and then from there, I can't remember exactly when I met you, but I remember just going to the different high tea events at your father's church.
Yeah, Second Baptist.
And just seeing you kind of float around.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yes, and I think eventually we were introduced, and then just over time, and even just in my line of work and just staying connected to the High Tea Society, we just stayed connected.
We stay connected.
Yeah.
You've always been an enthusiastic supporter, and we love you for that. I know for many years you worked as a journalist. I remember you interviewing me for something. I don't know. It was a while ago. Some kind of article you were doing.
Yeah, it was probably done with the High Tea Society because, again, just staying connected. I always love the mission of the High Tea Society. Sometimes I feel guilty that I wasn't able to do a lot more.
Oh, no.
But I always feel like in my capacity, I'll do whatever I can to just support.
And look at you here supporting. Thank you. Okay, well, I when you served as a journalist, I know that some of the work that you did really impacted you. Like, you did get to cover some fun things like high tea, but you also covered some serious things.
Yeah.
Tell me about one of that main situation or disaster, really, that you had to cover that really impacted you.
Yeah, sure. But just to kind of take it back a bit, so I covered a gamut of things.
Yeah.
So a lot of my topics dealt with, just current events.
Sure.
I've talked to celebrities and more. So, but the one major thing, it was actually, this is really how I initially got my start in journalism when I was interning for a local newspaper that's unfortunately no longer in operation called the Common Denominator. 9/11 hit.
Ooh.
It happened.
What was that? That was 2000.
That was 2001. Yes,
Yeah.
I was 21.
Okay, we're not going to say how old I was. I was here and working. Okay.
I was a student at Howard University. And the day that it happened, I had classes. I was a commuter student for one, since I'm from DC, didn't stay on campus. But the day of 9/11, it was one of those days where my classes were just stacked. So I was on campus pretty much all day long. And so I had an early morning class. I don't think nothing had happened yet. And it was so eerie because I still remember the day. A bright, sunny Tuesday. It almost felt like a summer day. I was listening to the radio. I was listening to the Russ Parr and Olivia Fox show that morning. I even still remember the topic. The topic that they talked about was around LGBTQ families adopting.
Okay.
Made my way to campus, had my first class. By the time I got out of my first class, I think the first plane may have hit one of the towers in New York. Because everyone was talking about, did you hear what happened in New York? And we were just all just kind of talking about it. So we get through that particular class. Well, no, we didn't even get through the full class because the provost of the university at the time, whatever was going on, he was keeping abreast of what was happening because everything was just happening so fast in real time.
Right.
I don't remember the exact time that the university shut down, but I remember the provost just going around. He came to my class, talked to my professor. There was a look of concern, and he just looked frantic. And my professor just said, okay, everyone, there's something going on. The university is shutting down immediately. And being that I was a commuter student, I immediately went back to my car, and I was just trying to get home. So I live in Southeast D.C.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get from Northwest to Southeast, and traffic was a mess, hot mess.
All you could do was walk.
Because it felt like everybody just had a sense of panic. And I take it these were federal government workers getting off of work, trying to get their babies out of school, just doing all of the things that we normally, like it just, and then.
All at the same time.
You couldn't even, if you wanted to make a call on your cell phone, you couldn't because the cell line.
I had Sprint, and Sprint was completely down. Yes, I recall.
Yeah, because I found out, at the time, both of my parents were still working. My father was in the military. He was in the D.C. National Guard. That day, I found out later on, he couldn't remember. So I also had a job in the federal government around that time, too. He couldn't remember if that was my day to be at work or my day to be on campus because he was trying to call me.
He's looking for his baby.
And he couldn't get to me.
Yeah.
So finally, I think the lines finally cleared like maybe late that night because unfortunately my father had to stay on. He was on lockdown at Bolin Air Force Base. And I think Bolin and Andrews, they went, whatever that highest alert is for the bases, they were on lockdown. He was not able to come home for a few days because that lockdown was just serious.
We were under attack. It was real.
Yes. So, so that was the day of 9/11. Shortly after my journalism internship started, from there, everything I wrote about was about the aftermath of 9/11 and talking to first responders, those who were caring for those at the Pentagon. One story in particular I remember doing was, I can't remember the barber and beauty school at the time, but they were here in D.C. But they were going to the Pentagon to care for the first responders. Because, mind you, first responders, I think they worked around the clock at the Pentagon just recovering, bodies or just looking for survivors and just sifting through the wreckage. And so what the barbers and the beauty school folks would do, they literally had a triage. They would set up camp right there on a site by the Pentagon, and the first responders would come in. They would get their haircuts, whatever type of hygiene need that they needed, they would do it. So when I wasn't able to go on site. Honestly, I don't think I could handle going on site. But what I did was, because the newspaper I was writing for, the beauty school was nearby. So I was just able to kind of walk over and get interviews that way. And what they did was they supplied pictures for me to use.
Ooh, my Lord.
They weren't gruesome. They were
before and after of the beauty service.
If I'm not mistaken, one photo was of one of the barbers actually giving one of the first responders a haircut. So it was something just simplistic and wholesome as that. Definitely didn't want anything. That was because it was already a traumatic event
for everyone.
So.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I cannot imagine how that experience impacted you. But did it? What was what was the fallout of just being sort of that close? You weren't like in the mix like there, but tangentially you were.
It's draining. And one of the things I always think about journalists to this day, when there's a catastrophic event going on. So same thing with the reporters probably reporting on what's going on in Gaza with Ukraine. It's draining when you are reporting on that type of topic.
Carnage.
And it's almost like And like I said, to be that young, to be in that experience of 9/11. And also the thing is to be impacted in a way where it impacts you as a journalist, as an emerging journalist, even as a student in college.
Right.
And then personally, because I had a relative, a cousin of mine, was a pilot. He was a retired pilot for the Air Force, and he went to work for American Airlines. When 9/11 happened, I remember there was panic in our family we called him Cuz. We said, where is Cuz? And my aunt and uncle said, oh my goodness, I think he had a flight. And we were trying to locate him. And thankfully, we heard from him a few days later. So he was already up in the air when everything was taking place. Right. And he was instructed to ground his plane. And thankfully, he was able to ground his plane in Texas because on his father's side, he has family in Texas. But 9/11 took a toll on me. But that was only kind of like the tip of the iceberg, too, because here I am, like I said, 21 years old at the time. I'm growing into adulthood.
Yes.
I'm still living at home.
Okay.
Yet I'm attending college full time. I was doing a lot.
Right.
The journalism internship was part-time, but full-time in a sense of meeting deadlines.
I was about to say, but they have a deadline. They have a deadline.
Meeting deadlines and so forth. I'm a full-time college student. So the course load that I had, I was up to 18 credits that semester.
Okay.
Then to have the job in the federal government, which was considered part-time.
Oh, la.
So
you're like juggling plates of spaghetti.
Yeah. Yes. Like.
Okay.
So it was a lot. And then to have a traumatic experience like 9/11 happen, there's only so much you can do. Like I managed to get through that semester. That happened that fall semester. Because remember 9/11, September 11. By that spring semester, I was done. I really was like, wow, like I struggled academically. And it showed because I ended up dropping some of my classes and just trying to figure out, okay, where do I go from here?
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
I even went AWOL from my federal government job because I was just so mentally exhausted. And the other part to that too was I knew I did not want to be in the federal government for long. Like my path was to be a journalist.
Yes.
And I was like, how am I going to do that? You know, those that are in DC, it was for years, and people will know, like for years, having that good government job was the thing.
That's right.
You know,
even as students.
Right.
Doesn't everyone of that time remember their first job? I was working in the work permit office.
Right.
And I was so excited to be able to pass these papers forward and let these people stamp these papers.
Right.
Man.
And I would say I'm thankful for that experience. And actually because it started with, it wasn't called the Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program at the time when I was in it, but it was simply the Summer Youth Employment Program. Yeah. And that was my foot in the door with the federal government. And I don't know if the federal government still has this, but they had a program called the Stay in School Program. So as long as that you were in school from high school, even through college, you had a job. You earned a paycheck. You just didn't earn leave. You didn't have leave to earn or lose, and it didn't have benefits. That was everything. But you had a steady
It was
paycheck.
so great for kids because you are now around people who are doing something. You have a place to be, and you're getting paid for it. So yeah, it was a great program. I know they sort of have a semblance of it now. I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Because when you have the federal government as one of the main participants, there's structure. And the structure is what was really helpful.
Right. But yeah, so I had to figure out at what point, like, I knew I needed to figure out some things, but I needed help.
Yeah.
and trying to figure it out. Because it was all just like a brain fog. Yeah.
That was a lot. I know we'll probably get into it a little bit when we get into the questions, but part of what would you say brought you a bit out of that? Did you reach out to someone or was it just church? Like what for you?
Yes, I guess I was mentally healthy enough to be, or I'll say this, I was self-aware enough to know something was wrong.
Yeah.
Because I started to kind of withdraw from pretty much everything.
Right.
I faked the funk for a while.
Which is what happens.
Yeah.
You know?
But no, I sought a therapist. I knew something was wrong. And I was just like, Tiff, it's time to seek a therapist. And around that time, there was always this stigma around therapy.
Right.
Because, and I always think back to the Mariah Carey episode when she was kind of going through her thing. And remember, it was a program she was on, and it just looked like she was kind of incoherent. And people always just associated going to a therapist as being in that state of being incoherent, just, for lack of a better term, just crazy.
Right.
Like
spinning out.
But
can't.
Of course, I knew enough to know. And here was the other thing too, because one of the courses I took as an elective in college was psychology.
Okay. So you sort of, at least you had a bit of the vocabulary.
Right.
I think that's helpful, but I also hope for our sugars out there that are listening to this that, sometimes it can be too much. You know, sometimes there's a traumatic experience that triggers it. It doesn't always have to be something that happens directly to you. Being a witness to something, having a friend who's close to you relay that something to you. It could be just like stuff that you're watching on television can like trigger things, and having awareness that, hey, let me maybe ask somebody, is this normal? Before we go too far with that, let's sort of switch the gears a bit. I really appreciate you sharing all that because I know that's very personal. But I feel like, I know Auntie Tiffany. Like, I know her, and I know that she has the tea to help girls succeed, right? But for my sugars out there, what do you think? I mean, you remember our rule that you can't take directions from someone who's lost. So maybe we need to try to learn a bit more about Auntie Tiffany's high school years so that we can know what's going on. Before we go to a question, though, who are we going to dedicate this episode to? I think we talked about maybe dedicating this to your daughter.
Yes, my daughter, Taylor.
Taylor, okay.
Who is 16.
She's 16.
Yes.
Oh, perfect age. Perfect age to be a sugar with us. Okay, so Tiffany, we're moving into talking a little bit more about high school. So what's your full name?
Tiffany Elaine Browne.
Oh, how
and
elegant.
That's Brown with an E.
With an E, folks. Please get that right. Okay. And Tiffany, where'd you grow up? I heard you mention Southeast. Is that where you're from?
Yes.
Okay,
so
girl.
I'm
right.
a DC native. I grew up in Southeast, close to like the Fort DuPont Park area.
Yeah, we're neighbors.
Yes.
Okay. And you went to high school also local, right?
Yeah. So I didn't go to a DC. So even though my mother worked in DCPS, I didn't go to a DCPS school. Okay. I was mainly in private school all my life. So even for high school, I went to Bishop McNamara, which is just across the line in Maryland. And when I got there, oh Lord, this may age me too.
Uh-oh.
So McNamara used to be an all-boys school, but by the time that I got there, it was still newly co-ed. Because I still remember my freshman year, the girls' senior year were from Lorraine, which was the sister school to McNamara.
Everybody
so they were still in their blue Lorraine uniforms.
I'll tell you one thing, everybody in this area knew McNamara for the Go-Go's they used to throw. And that is...
As a matter of fact, my freshman year, I would never forget, we had Optimistic Tribe for homecoming.
I rest my case. Okay. That is the first go-go I went to was at McNamara. Because my parents were like, you going where? No, ma'am. But I was like, I'm going to a dance. Okay. Okay, so we're dedicating this to Taylor. All right, here's our first question. My mom started following me on TikTok and IG. I hate it. Why doesn't she trust me?
So I would say it's not that she doesn't trust you. It may be she doesn't trust the folks on the interweb.
Okay.
The internet.
The internet.
Of things. And I've kind of had this talk with my daughter early on because I remember before, because of course, for any social media, the minimum age is 13.
Okay, who knew that?
Well, my child had decided before she was even 13, had signed up for like Instagram, Snapchat,
Okay,
like all the things. Now, here's the thing. She didn't have a phone. I'm the type of parent that she just got her phone at 16, believe it or not.
Okay.
But she had other electronic devices. So she had whatever the last generation of an iPod, she had that. And then, of course, she eventually had a iPad. So I was always just kind of monitoring her activity. And then when I saw that she had signed up for Snapchat and all that other stuff, I said, wait a minute.
Okay, ma'am.
So I had to have the conversation with her about predators and the reality that you think you might be talking to someone who is your age.
Right, trolls.
But it is a grown person behind it, and you don't know what their intentions are. Clearly, it won't be the best intentions.
Right. If they have to do all of this subterfuge, yeah.
So because and my daughter, I love her dearly, but she was so quick at the time to just call any and everyone her friend.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, sweetie. Like,
that's all the love you've given her to be that loving and kind herself.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not that your parent or your mother doesn't trust you. She's just concerned about your safety.
Yeah.
And just making sure that there are safeguards in place, that you're doing what you're supposed to do, and that also there's nothing from the other party per se inappropriate taking place.
Absolutely. And we already know, because we know that the executives, the Facebook executives, we know Facebook owns Instagram. We don't know what TikTok's about because that's foreign, but we know that they specifically created an interface that negatively impacts young people and adults too, right? They know that they purposely did this to keep us, they created a way to keep us hooked. They created a way to have specific information filtered to the top. This was intentional. And so when you're young, it's very hard to decipher that and to figure out, this is not so great. But even when you're older, my age, honey, there are times during my week when I'm feeling like weak and vulnerable. Maybe I'm not feeling so pretty, or I'm not feeling so confident. I'm not turning on TikTok or Instagram.
Social media is a lot.
It's a lot, and it's a lie. So it like they have said that 17% of teen girls say that their eating disorders worsened after Instagram use. 32% report that the app made them feel worse about their bodies, about their life, about how they're, what they have and don't have. It can really sort of tip the scales.
Yeah,
we know this.
And I think that's one of the saving grace in terms of the relationship that I have with my daughter. I was very adamant that she was not going to have a phone until 16.
Yeah,
because I felt like, one, as her mom, I should always know where she is.
Yes, Mom.
And even though I know payphones are basically obsolete, but if she was at a place where I may have dropped her off and would have to come back, and she may need to communicate with me, we would have our own system in which,
how she would do that.
But one of the things I will say, with social media or not to put my daughter's business out there, but I know that there have been moments where she has struggled with that confidence and within her. And that's when I started having to talk with her about, do you know what it means to be a Black girl? Do you know what it means to be a Black girl in America?
Yes.
Do you know... do you fully understand the stock of Black women you come from? And one of the other things that I did, because I also come from it from a spiritual perspective too. So I remember one conversation I had with her. I did two things. One, so you remember that episode of A Different World where Kim is being portrayed, she's having issues seeing Mammy And by the end of the episode, she does the Nikki Giovanni poem, Ego Tripping.
Yes.
But they don't do the whole poem. They just do snippets of it.
Right, yeah.
I love that poem. And to any of the sugars reading or listening, go look up Ego Trippin' by Nikki Giovanni.
Yes.
Because the perspective of that poem, the way Nikki Giovanni wrote that poem, it's as if God is a woman, a black woman. And just going through it line by line with my daughter. And because one, I started showing her the clip on YouTube of Kim Reese reciting that poem.
I have to go watch that again.
And then we read it line by line. And I just had her really take in the imagery and had her really think about, what the poem is actually saying.
Yeah.
I followed up with something as basic as the creation story.
Yeah.
Because as a component to that poem, if you recall, part of that poem kind of relates to creation. And so when I took my daughter back to the creation story, to Genesis, of how the Lord created everything in 7 days.
And it was good.
And it was good. I had her repeat, and it is good.
It is good.
And so, yeah.
I love that. It's going to take us right to our next question, too, which is, how do you have confidence? So the question is, everyone says that it's so important to have confidence in yourself, but how do I build up my confidence to be bolder? And I think you just sort of answered that. Finding creative means, like a poem, something that's written, something that's like a mantra, something that you can tell yourself over and over. It's helpful. Anything else you want to add to like what that might be?
So as I tell my daughter too, I can talk to her till I'm blue in the face about having confidence, being bold, walking with your head held high, all of that. But I said what it boils down to is you have to want it for you.
Yeah.
And even for me, when I'm having a moment where I may not be feeling the best of the best.
Yeah.
So I'm a high heel person.
Okay,
so
girl.
What gets me going is I will put on my best high heels, get dressed up, and figure out, okay, where are we going? Even if it's just strutting around the house for the day.
Yes.
I will do that. And then also music. I am a music fanatic. And like my music collection goes from everything. It has gospel, jazz, hip hop, a good Megan Thee Stallion record too. Yeah, and even when you're riding in the car with me, you never know what you're going to get. Yeah. So just listening to music also gives me a good boost. I have a whole playlist, matter of fact.
I love it. It's helpful. I mean, I know sometimes I have to be careful of the lyrics for myself because I sing, I like to sing, so I pick up lyrics quickly, and I notice that when I say certain, I'm like just singing, all of a sudden I start thinking, what did she just say?
Yeah.
What did I just say? Oh, no. So I have to like really be careful because I will start to repeat whatever it is. Wow, this is good information. Let me try to get in a couple more questions before we go. I know we're running short of time, but listen, here's one. All I want to do is stay in the house and sleep. Okay, is there something wrong with me?
Not at all. I won't say it's anything majorly wrong, but just be self-aware enough to know if this is out of your norm. Because it could be you've had a very long, because I know school is challenging.
It's tough these days.
And especially in high school. And when you got, particularly if you're a junior or senior.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking about college.
Right.
You're thinking about life after high school. So, and then of course you also want to figure in prom, homecoming, like all of the fun activities.
Right.
So just having that self-awareness to know that it's outside of your norm.
Right.
If it is outside of your norm, even if you don't feel confident enough to speak to your mom, grandma, whomever, speak to a peer, talk to someone that you can definitely trust to just kind of be your sounding board. We all need that.
Yeah.
What I have found since coming into adulthood, and even really when I was in high school, having that good, all it takes is that one good girlfriend of yours that you trust, that loves you like a sister, that will hold your secrets, like the inner part of you, close to her chest. That's all it takes. And that is very, very helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping, what I'm finding is that when I'm discussing friendships with other adult women, when they find out, like I've had friendships that go back. I have a girlfriend that I said that's my sandbox. Her and
Sandbox, I love that.
her and I go back since kindergarten. Then I have another girlfriend. Her and I go back from high school. Like those are my two close sisters. And I know that I can be their sounding board as well as they are for me. So
I like what you said about the norm. So like these compatriots, your tribe, your girls, whatever, they can help you figure out like, yeah, girl, you don't sleep all the time. You know, like you used to be doing X, Y, Z. What's happening? Because it's when we begin to change, abruptly shift the way we do things is when sometimes there's a red flag, right? So if you're the type of person that never used to sleep in, was always excited about the day, and now that's all you want to do, that might be a red flag. Or it could be just that you're tired this week. Maybe you took up running, or I don't know. But there might be a reason. So it's things to kind of pay attention to. Okay.
And one other quick note too, depending on what type of relationship you have with your guidance counselor at school, because guidance counselors are there to help as well.
Yeah.
If it's one that you know that you can really, really trust. And I only mention a guidance counselor because they may not be psychologist or a full-on like social counselor per se, but they are a resource to lean onto because whatever you're going through affects your academic life, and you want to make sure that you stay on track.
Right. Girl, thank you. You have shared some tea with us. Such good information. I'm hoping that it really is going to resonate with some of our sugars out there and our parents and everybody else, because we could all benefit. So thank you, Auntie Tiffany, for sharing your tea with us. Growing up in D.C. is hard work, but sugar, you don't have to do it alone. Join us every week for reliable answers to your questions. I'm Auntie M, Director of the High Tea Society, and you can contact us via IG at High Tea Society INC, and we're spelling that like HIGHTEA Society INC, or you can send us an email, hello@highteasociety.org, O-R-G, or if you want to donate, we love that. Text Purple Tea, one word, to 44321. We have the tea to help girls succeed, tools for excellence and achievement.
You've been listening to Ask Your Auntie with your host, Marisa Terrell, Esquire. The transition from girlhood to womanhood can be difficult without guidance. We have the tea to help girls succeed. When you can't ask your mom or G-Ma, ask your auntie.